Welcome to the Aaron Smith Podcast, a place to discover your mental, emotional, and spiritual resiliency. I am your host, Aaron Smith. Let's get it going. Good day, everybody, and thank you for checking in. We're about to roll with episode number 4 of the Aaron Smith Podcast. Today we are going to talk about depression and burnout, kind of one versus the other and how they might look one and the same. So I want to first of all thank everybody for listening to episode number 3 with Lori Queta. That was we got great feedback, and that was, although we've only had 3, that was our most listened to episode so far. So thank you so much for the positive feedback. I really appreciate it. And I want to apologize for taking so long to get episode number 4 rolling. I had recorded it once and lost the file, so I had to go back to the drawing board and record it again, and I lost that file as well. So here we are at our third go around. So it did take me a little bit longer than I had anticipated. So thank you for hanging in there, and let's get into it. So burnout versus depression. So I got to thinking about, as I'm talking to some folks at work, what is the difference between the two? And studies are showing now that burnout and depression are clinically being treated the same. And that if you're suffering from burnout, you most likely are depressed or share the same symptoms, and it can be treated through counseling, typically CBT or cognitive behavioral therapy. But in either case, if you're suffering from extreme burnout, it's time for you to take control of your mental health and seek some help. So burnout occurs when passionate, committed people become deeply disillusioned with a job or a career from which they have previously derived much of their identity and meaning. It comes as the things that inspire passion and enthusiasm are stripped away and tedious or unpleasant things crowd in. So listening to this particular definition, I'm sure all of us at some point can pretty much say that we have reached burnout, are burnt out, or have experienced these emotions at some time during our career. The key to this, however, is that when this begins to spill over into personal life, and symptoms of depression set in, like the job becomes so tedious, or you have so much burnout from the job that now you are kind of isolated from friends, family, social interactions. You're constantly tired. You're not looking forward to anything. Nothing excites you anymore like it used to. Those are a lot of the signs of depression. So if you are experiencing burnout from the job, and you can shut off work and maintain your relationships at home, then just try to find that spark at work to kind of get you back into the groove or whatever it may be. But we really want to be careful in the fact that this burnout at work does not lead to depression that carries over into our outside of work life. So I read an interesting study that was published by the Journal of Clinical Psychology, where researchers surveyed 1,400 American public school teachers during the 2013-2014 academic year. Based on the survey responses, they identified a set of teachers who showed signs of burnout. When they matched the teacher's symptoms to a depression scale, 86% of those with burnout met the criteria for a provisional diagnosis of depression. So, what's more, the study says the teachers with burnout were also about twice as likely to have a history of anxiety disorders, 3 times as likely to have a history of depression, and nearly 4 times as likely to be taking antidepressants. So the evidence in the study is basically goes on to state that they treat depression and burnout on kind of the same continuum. And there's a Dr. Schoenfeld, who's a PhD psychology professor at the Colin Powell School for Civic and Global Leadership, that basically he indicates that if you go back to the original paper that was published about burnout, rather, it was done by a Dr. Herbert Freudenberger, in which he studied people who volunteered at a drug treatment center who dealt with very difficult patients. And one of the ways he described burnout was that, quote, it looks a lot like depression. So one of the biggest misconceptions about burnout a lot of the time is that it's just limited to the workplace. Implications are that when you leave work, you might feel a little bit better, whereas with depression, you're in a constant dysphoric state most of the time. but it's very difficult to distinguish between those two based on those causes. Because people with burnout don't tend to feel better just on the weekends. I mean, we all have our past days and we take days off, and we know we're burned out coming up on a vacation. But when we come back from vacation or our past days, that burnout is still there, right? You can take a vacation to escape that work burnout, but it's still there when you come back the next week or the next day. So the problem is that burnout is not even listed as a psychological disorder in the what they call the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual on Mental Disorders. But if you go to counseling for burnout, it's treated similarly to depression when you seek help. You got to be careful because burnout and depression share a lot of the same symptoms: feeling like physically and emotionally drained, easily irritated by small problems, misunderstood and underappreciated, but they don't inspire the same call to action. People who think they're burned out believe that what they have is not the same or as serious as depression. So I think if we tell ourselves that we have depression, if we tell ourselves that we are burned out, that's pretty safe, right? Burnout sounds better. We're better able to accept burnout than we are to say we're depressed. And that's, according to this research article, that's a slippery slope. So if we're depressed, we might go ahead and seek mental help or, check in with a counselor. But just for burnout, we will be very hesitant to do so. Unfortunately, the same problems that you have with burnout are also associated with the depressive state. So take control of your mental health, right? If you are extremely burned out and you're recognizing that, chances are you're pretty depressed as well. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with just saying to yourself, man, I'm simply burned out, and go seek help. A lot of this treatments are based off, again, cognitive behavioral therapy, and that's just simply changing the mindset, changing the way that you look at the job, look at your life in general. And as a lot of these episodes and podcasts go forth, you're going to hear me talk a lot about mindset, about taking control and taking ownership of our mental health and our emotional health. We are the ones that are responsible. I saw a quote one time that said, we may not be responsible for the things that have happened to us or the things that we have seen, but we're 100% responsible for fixing those or for getting that healing. And nobody's going to know that but you. With me, obviously there was a lot of people that supported me, but first and foremost, I had to seek that out. I had to seek out that help. I had to seek out friends and counseling, and I'm the one that was responsible for changing my mindset. So do not be hesitant to go ahead and get that help. Going on, talking about exhaustion as well. Many times we will say we feel exhausted. Could be burnout, could be depression as well. If burnout is simply exhaustion, you wouldn't need the word burnout. Exhaustion would do fine. Instead, this Dr. Leiter measures burnout as a 3-part syndrome of exhaustion, cynicism, and inefficacy, in line with a burnout criteria. Meta-analysis and reviews have confirmed that over 90% of research on burnout uses a 3-part, they call it the Maslach burnout inventory. But what's funny about that is that the Dr. Schoenfeld also uses the same measure against depression, in which exhaustion is usually the primary symptom. So what I want to really just focus on today is that if you are feeling this burnout and you are afraid to seek help, understand that you got to be responsible and take ownership for that. Talk to somebody and reach out. Share that with somebody, like, hey, I'm just super burned out. Somebody that you trust, that loves you enough and cares about you enough to tell you, you know what, let's get this fixed. Let's talk to somebody, or be that buddy that helps them out to work through those issues of the burnout, so that it's not a really dark or deep depression. So that's really it for today. Just was on my heart to bring that to you folks and to share that with you so that we can take ownership of that and again get fixed. So a short one, and unfortunately it's just me again yakking, but that's the way it is for now. So I appreciate you hanging in there. Coming up soon, we have my buddy Tyler and I have finished our class. It's called Right of Bang. It's building mental and emotional resiliency within the law enforcement and first responder community. We're looking to bring that class to Kellogg Community College here in Battle Creek sometime in late June. So I'll definitely keep everybody up to date on that as soon as we get the venue booked and the information comes out. In the meantime, our class has been MCOLS approved for all you law enforcement officers, but we are going to attempt to run the first one free of charge. So you will just simply be responsible for getting yourselves there, and hopefully we can drop that in free of charge on our first class up there. So, excuse me. If you want to check out any information on that, we have a website called, it's going to be rallypointdefense.net, rallypointdefense.net. Click down onto the training tab, and the first class that should pop up will be called Right of Bang, and it will give you a good class description. It will go over the course outline. It will tell you what we talk about as far as mindset, attitudes, and how to fix those attitudes and build resilience within our community. So please check that out. Coming up, I'm going to have Lori Cueta back on the show here sometime shortly down the stretch. We're going to talk about the issue of sleep and sleep depression within our first responder community. Everybody out there listening knows that sleep is detrimental and we are lacking it. So we're going to go over the physiological and psychological effects that sleep deprivation has on us, specifically when we're talking about shift work and 10-hour shifts, 12-hour shifts, days on, days off, court, and all that good stuff that interferes with a good night's sleep. So we are going to share that information with you as well. So that will be it for today. Please keep the comments coming. I really, really appreciate it. If there's something that you want to hear or somebody you want me to talk to or reach out to, please let me know that as well. My main go-to right now obviously is still Facebook. I'm going to put this up on Facebook, so share that with everybody. We are on Spotify. Of course, we're recording this through the Anchor app, and I think Google Play apps are one of those, but I'm not 100% sure. And of course, I will throw this up on YouTube for everybody as well. That is it for now. Hey, everybody, take care of yourselves out there. Take care of each other, and we will talk to you soon. Thank you. We're out.